I never thought I'd be the kind of man who'd have to explain why speaking Arabic saved my life. But here I am, 3 years later, and I can tell you exactly how understanding every word of a language your wife thinks you don't speak can turn your entire world inside out. My name is Blake Morrison, and I'm 34 years old. I work in corporate logistics here in Boulder, pulling in around $400,000 a year. Comfortable life. Nice house. All the trappings of success. That Thursday afternoon, I stood frozen in my own hallway, listening to my wife Aisha tell her mother Nisa, her sister Clarissa, and her aunt Rose, in perfect Arabic, that she'd never loved me, that I was nothing but a wallet with legs, that she was just waiting for my stock options to vest before filing for divorce and walking away with $2 million. She had no idea I'd spent 2 years in Jordan, that I spoke fluent Arabic, that I understood every single word. But let me start from the beginning. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. The drive back from Denver took 4 hours. I'd been sitting in the airport Marriott lobby about to check in when my phone buzzed with an email from corporate. Meeting canceled. Technical issues on their end. They'd reschedule for next week. I could have stayed the night anyway. Could have hit the hotel bar, caught up on emails, enjoyed a quiet evening alone. Instead, I got back in my rental car and drove straight home. I remember that detail so clearly now. How one small decision, coming home early, changed absolutely everything. I pulled into our driveway around 2 p.m. The Colorado sun was bright overhead, warm for October. Our house is a 3-bedroom Craftsman in North Boulder, the kind of place that screams, successful professional couple. We'd bought it together 4 years ago, both our names on the deed. That detail would matter later. I grabbed my overnight bag from the trunk and headed toward the garage entrance. That's when I heard them, loud animated voices coming from inside. Women's voices speaking rapid-fire Arabic, punctuated by laughter. Aisha had company. I pushed through the garage door into the mudroom, then stepped into the kitchen. 4 women sat around our dining table, teacups spread out in front of them like they'd settled in for the afternoon. My wife Aisha stood at the counter pouring more tea from the kettle. She looked up when I walked in, and her face shifted immediately into that smile, the one I'd seen 1,000 times. Warm, welcoming, practiced. "Blake, you're home early." She said it in English, bright and surprised. I set my bag down on the floor by the door. Meeting got canceled. Technical problems on their end. Her mother Nisa sat at the head of the table, wearing a conservative navy dress, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She nodded at me with that thin-lipped acknowledgement she always gave me. Polite. Distant. "I hope your trip was comfortable," Nisa said in careful English, her accent thick but her words measured. "It was fine," I said. "Traffic wasn't too bad." Aisha's sister Clarissa sat to Nisa's left. She was 36, 2 years older than Aisha, and she barely looked up from her phone. Just a quick glance and a half smile. Rose, Aisha's aunt, sat across from Clarissa. She was older, maybe early 60s, with sharp eyes that always seemed to be evaluating everything. She nodded at me and said nothing. "I'll let you visit," I said, picking up my bag. "I need to catch up on some emails upstairs." "Take your time, honey," Aisha said, still smiling, still performing. I walked toward the hallway that led to the stairs. My footsteps were deliberate, loud enough for them to hear. I wanted them to think I'd gone up, but I stopped just around the corner, just out of sight, and I stood there in the hallway, my back against the wall, listening. You know that moment when your whole body goes still? When every instinct tells you something's wrong, but you need to hear it confirmed? That's where I was. They switched back to Arabic immediately. The conversation picked up like I'd never interrupted it. Aisha's voice came first, casual and contemptuous. 6 years of this tedious man. 6 years of pretending to care about his boring stories, his pathetic friends. I felt my jaw clench. My hands tightened around the strap of my bag. Clarissa laughed, that sharp, knowing laugh. "But the money is good, right?" "The money is excellent," Aisha replied, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "He makes $400,000 a year, and he's so stupidly generous. The house is in both our names. I've been documenting everything. My lawyer says when I'm ready to leave, I'll walk away with at least $2 million, probably more. My blood went cold, not from shock, from pure crystalline rage. Nisa's voice came next, softer, approving. You've been patient, Habibti. Many women would have left sooner. I'm not stupid, Aisha said. I need to wait until the stock options vest next year. Then I'll file. I'll say he was emotionally abusive, that I felt trapped. American judges love that story. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, controlled it. Rose's voice cut in, curious. And you already have Jared waiting, yes? Jared, her friend from the gym, the guy she'd been spending 3 afternoons a week with for the past 8 months. She'd told me he was her personal trainer. Jared understands me, Aisha said, and I heard the warmth in her voice, the kind of warmth she used to give me years ago. He actually makes me feel something. Blake is just there, a wallet with legs. They all laughed, all 4 of them. I stood in that hallway listening to my wife and her family laugh at me, and something inside me snapped. Not in a loud, explosive way, in a cold, methodical way. I walked into the kitchen. 4 faces turned toward me in perfect unison. The laughter died immediately. Aisha's smile froze halfway. Nisa's teacup stopped midair. Clarissa's eyes went wide. Rose just stared. Blake, Aisha said brightly, switching to English like flipping a light switch. Did you need something? I looked at each of them in turn. Let the silence stretch. Then I spoke in perfect, fluent Arabic. I need you to understand that I heard every word you just said. The color drained from Aisha's face like someone had pulled a plug. Nisa's teacup rattled against the saucer as her hand started shaking. Clarissa's mouth actually fell open. Rose went completely still. Aisha tried to recover, her voice pitching higher. Blake, don't. I cut her off, still in Arabic. Don't insult me further by pretending. I speak Arabic fluently. I have for years. I spent 2 years in Jordan working as a logistics coordinator. I've understood every conversation you've had in front of me for our entire marriage. Blake, please, let me explain. Explain what? I switched to English, and my voice came out hard and cold. Explain how you've been using me, how you've never loved me, how you're planning to rob me blind and run off with Jared from the gym. Nisa stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You have no right to. Sit down, I said. The weight in my voice stopped her cold. She actually sat back down. This is my house, I continued. You're here because I've tolerated you. That ends now. I turned back to Aisha. She was gripping the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to call your lawyer, the one you've been conspiring with, and you're going to tell him the case is off. Then you're going to pack a bag and leave. Today. This is my house too, Aisha shouted, and I saw panic flash across her face. You can't just throw me out. Watch me, I said. Because here's what you don't know. I'm not the stupid American you thought I was. I've been documenting things too. I pulled out my phone, opened a folder I'd been building for 14 months, ever since I first suspected something was wrong. Like the $20,000 you transferred to your sister last month, I said, looking at Clarissa. From our joint account. You told me it was for a down payment on a condo. Clarissa went pale. I checked, I continued. That condo doesn't exist. I swiped to the next file. Or the credit cards you opened in my name. 3 of them, totaling about $15,000 in charges. Aisha's eyes went wide. Or the fact that you quit your job 8 months ago and never told me. You've been pretending to go to work while you spend your days with Jared. I held up my phone, showed them a photograph. Aisha and Jared walking into the Hilton downtown, his arm around her waist. I have bank statements, I said. Credit reports. Private investigator photos. Text messages recovered from the cloud. I have everything. Aisha was shaking now. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself, I said. You want to know the difference between you and me? You're a con artist. I'm a strategist. You planned to cheat me. I planned for the possibility that you might. Nisa stood again, her voice shrill. This is insane. We should call the police. Please do, I said coldly. I'd love to show them the evidence of fraud. Wire fraud is a federal crime, by the way. So is identity theft. I looked back at Aisha. Her practiced mask was completely gone now. She looked terrified. You have two choices, I said. You leave quietly. We file for divorce on grounds of fraud and adultery. You get nothing except whatever a judge thinks you deserve after seeing all my evidence. Or you make this difficult and I pursue criminal charges for the financial crimes. Your pick. Blake, please. Her voice cracked. Real tears now. We can fix this. I made a mistake. I love you. No, I said flatly. You don't. You just said so. In Arabic, 20 minutes ago. And the sad thing? I suspected for about a year. The way you looked at me, the way you cringed when I touched you. I just needed to be sure. So I let you keep talking and you confirmed everything. I walked to the front door and held it open. All of you. Out of my house. Now. Nisa started to argue in rapid Arabic, but I cut her off with a string of phrases that made her eyes go wide. Cultural references, idioms, things only a fluent speaker would know. She grabbed her purse and left without another word. Rose followed immediately. Clarissa hesitated, looked at Aisha, then rushed out after them. Aisha stood alone in the middle of the kitchen, crying, mascara running down her face. Blake, please, she said. We've been together 6 years, that has to mean something. It did, I said, right up until I heard you call me a wallet with legs. I looked at my watch. Pack your essentials. You have 2 hours. I'll be in my office. When I come out, you'd better be gone, or I'm calling the police and showing them everything. Where am I supposed to go? To Jared, I said. The man who actually makes you feel something. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to support you. I paused. Oh, wait. He's a personal trainer who makes $30,000 a year. Good luck with that. She stared at me, and I saw the exact moment she realized she'd lost. That she'd gambled on my ignorance and lost catastrophically. I went to my office and closed the door. 2 hours later, I heard the front door slam. I sat in Harold Rafiq's office the next morning. A briefcase full of documentation on the desk between us. Harold was a Pakistani-American attorney in his late 40s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He'd built his reputation over 20 years as Colorado's best divorce attorney, and his specialty was destroying fraudulent spouses. He'd been reviewing my documents for 20 minutes without speaking, just flipping pages, occasionally making notes, his sharp features absolutely unreadable. Finally, he looked up. Mr. Morrison, he said, this is extraordinary documentation. How long have you been preparing this case? 14 months, I said. I had suspicions. About a year ago, things started feeling off. The way Aisha looked at me. The way she'd find excuses not to be home. Little things that didn't add up. Harold nodded, still reviewing the files. So you hired a private investigator? Ernie Kim, I confirmed. He's thorough. Spent months documenting everything. The affair, the financial irregularities, her employment status. And you never confronted her during those 14 months? No, I said. I needed to be sure. I needed evidence. Because I knew if I was wrong, I'd destroy my marriage for nothing. And if I was right, I needed proof that would stand up in court. Harold held up the transcript of the Arabic recording. This conversation, you recorded it legally? Colorado is a one-party consent state, I said. I was present during the conversation. I had every right to record in my own home. And you speak Arabic fluently enough to testify to the translation? I lived in Jordan for 2 years, I said. Worked as a logistics coordinator in Amman. I learned the language from my colleagues there. I can provide references, language certifications, documentation of my time overseas. It won't be an issue. Harold leaned back in his chair, a slight smile crossing his face. Your wife made a critical error. She assumed you were ignorant. That's the foundation of every con, assuming the mark doesn't know what you're doing. She was careful about a lot of things, I said. But she got comfortable. Arrogant. She thought she had me completely fooled. The photographs of the affair are conclusive, Harold said, flipping to another section. Multiple dates at the Hilton. Restaurant receipts. Text message recovery from cloud storage. Mr. Kim did excellent work. Ernie's good at what he does. Harold reviewed the financial records next. The $20,000 transferred to her sister. That's going to be significant. And the credit cards opened in your name constitute identity theft. That's a federal crime. I know, I said. That's why I mentioned it during the confrontation. I wanted her to understand exactly how much trouble she's in. And she quit her job 8 months ago. Told me she was still going to work every day, I said. She'd leave the house at the normal time, come home at the normal time. I had no idea until Ernie followed her and discovered she was spending her days with Jared, sometimes at his apartment, sometimes at hotels. Harold made another note. Your wife has retained Victor Green. Do you know him? No. He's competent but overconfident, Harold said. His standard playbook is to paint the husband as controlling or abusive. He'll try to portray your wife as a victim who was trapped in an oppressive marriage. He's won cases that way before. Let him try, I said. My voice came out harder than I intended. I have 6 years of text messages, 6 years of emails, 6 years of witnesses who'll testify that I was supportive, generous, and faithful. She has nothing but lies. Harold nodded approvingly. What's your goal here? What do you want out of this divorce? I didn't hesitate. I want her to get nothing. Not the house. Not my retirement accounts, not a single dollar of alimony. I want her to walk away with exactly what she brought into this marriage, which was nothing. That's an aggressive position, Harold said. Colorado is an equitable distribution state. Judges typically try to divide assets fairly. There's nothing fair about rewarding fraud, I said. She married me under false pretenses. She never loved me. She admitted that in her own words. She spent 6 years planning to rob me. That's not a marriage. That's a long-term con. Harold studied me for a moment. You understand this is going to get ugly? Green will attack your character. He'll try to make you look like a monster who drove your poor wife into the arms of another man. I understand, I said. And I'm ready. Because here's what Green doesn't know. I documented everything. Not just Aisha's affair and fraud. I documented our entire relationship. Every anniversary dinner. Every birthday gift, every vacation. I have photographs, receipts, witness statements. I can prove I was a devoted husband who gave her everything she asked for. Why did you document all of that? I thought about it. Because I wanted to remember the good times. I thought we were building something real. I took pictures at restaurants. I saved cards she gave me. I kept records of trips we took together. I paused. Turns out that documentation serves a different purpose now. Harold smiled grimly. Then let's go to war. I'll file a response to whatever Green submits. We'll request a temporary orders hearing to establish support and living arrangements while the divorce proceeds. That'll be our first battlefield. How soon? 2 weeks probably. Maybe 3 depending on the court's schedule. What should I expect? Green will argue that Aisha needs temporary support, Harold said. He'll claim she's destitute, that she has nowhere to go, that you've left her with nothing. He'll paint you as cruel and vindictive. And our response? We play the recording, Harold said simply. We show the judge exactly who Aisha Morrison really is. We demonstrate the fraud, the affair, the calculated deception. We make it clear that she's not a victim. She's a con artist who got caught. I felt something settle in my chest. Not satisfaction, exactly. More like certainty. I'd made the right choice coming to Harold. One more thing, Harold said. Has she tried to contact you since the confrontation? Multiple calls and texts, I said. I haven't answered any of them. Good. Don't. All communication goes through me from now on. If she shows up at your house, you call the police immediately. Don't engage. Don't argue. Don't let her manipulate you. I won't, I said. Harold stood, extended his hand. I'll file the initial paperwork today. You should expect her to be served within 48 hours. After that, things move fast. I shook his hand and left. When I got home, the house felt different. Empty in a way it hadn't been before. Aisha's things were gone. Her clothes, her laptop, her collection of decorative pillows she'd insisted we needed. I spent the weekend organizing additional evidence, going through old emails, categorizing financial records, building a timeline of Aisha's deception. My phone kept buzzing, texts from Aisha. Blake, please, we need to talk. I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you. Can we at least discuss this like adults? I deleted every message without responding, because Harold was right. There was nothing left to discuss. The courthouse steps felt steeper than they should have on a Tuesday morning. 2 weeks had passed since I'd sat in Harold's office, and now here I was, briefcase in hand, evidence organized, ready for the first real fight. I spotted Aisha before she saw me. She stood near the entrance with Victor Green, and I had to hand it to her. She'd chosen her costume well. Minimal makeup, like she'd been crying too much to bother. Conservative navy dress that screamed, respectable wife. Hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The whole presentation whispered victim. Green was talking to her in low tones, probably coaching her on how to look appropriately devastated. He was maybe mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who'd built a career on painting husbands as monsters. Harold met me at the security checkpoint. You ready? I've been ready for 2 weeks, I said. Good, because Green's going to come out swinging. He knows we have strong evidence, so he's going to try to make this about emotion instead of facts. Don't react. Don't engage. Let me handle it. We walked into the courtroom. Judge Edmund Parker was already at the bench, early 60s gray hair, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed the case file. He had a reputation for being fair, but no nonsense. Harold had told me that was good news for us. Parker looked up as we entered. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Yes, Your Honor, Green said, standing. Yes, Your Honor, Harold echoed. This is a temporary orders hearing in the matter of Morrison versus Morrison, Parker said. Mr. Green, you filed the motion for temporary support. Proceed. Green stood, and I watched him transform. His whole demeanor shifted. Concerned, protective, righteous. Your Honor, my client, Aisha Morrison, has been married to Blake Morrison for 6 years. During that time, she endured a controlling relationship where her husband monitored her movements, isolated her from her family, and treated her more like property than a partner. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my expression neutral. Harold had warned me this was coming. Mrs. Morrison finally found the courage to end this toxic relationship, Green continued, only to have her husband throw her out of their home with no warning and no resources. She's currently staying with friends, struggling to afford basic necessities. She needs temporary support while this case proceeds through the courts. She's entitled to maintain the lifestyle she enjoyed during the marriage. Green sat down, looking satisfied. Parker turned to Harold. Mr. Rafiq? Harold stood slowly, deliberately. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence Exhibit A, a recording made by my client in his own home on the afternoon of Thursday, October 12th. He handed a thumb drive to the bailiff, who plugged it into the courtroom's audio system. What is the nature of this recording? Parker asked. Your Honor, it's a conversation between Mrs. Morrison and her family members discussing their plan to defraud my client. Green shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is... I'll hear it, Parker said. Play the recording. Harold pressed play. The audio was crystal clear. I'd made sure of that. The kitchen conversation filled the courtroom. Aisha's voice in Arabic laughing as she described 6 years of pretending to care about my boring stories and pathetic friends. The money is excellent. He makes $400,000 a year and he's so stupidly generous. I watched Aisha's face drain of color. I'll say he was emotionally abusive, that I felt trapped. American judges love that story. Green looked like he'd been hit. Blake is just there, a wallet with legs. The recording ended. The courtroom was silent. Your Honor, Harold said calmly, Colorado is a one-party consent state. My client was present during this conversation in his own home. The recording is completely legal. I'm aware of Colorado law, Mr. Rafiq, Parker said. Continue. Harold handed the bailiff a document. This is a certified translation of the Arabic portions of the conversation, provided by Dr. Amira Hassan, a professor of Arabic studies at the University of Colorado. My client is also fluent in Arabic and can testify to the accuracy if needed. Your Honor, this is invasive, Green started. It's evidence. Parker cut him off. Mr. Rafiq, what else do you have? Harold opened his briefcase like a surgeon selecting instruments. Financial records showing unauthorized transfers from joint accounts. He handed over documents. $20,000 transferred to Mrs. Morrison's sister Clarissa for a condo down payment that, upon investigation, we discovered never existed. I saw Aisha whisper something urgent to Green. Credit card applications, Harold continued, filed in my client's name without his knowledge or authorization, and hotel receipts documenting Mrs. Morrison's affair with a man named Jared Matthews over the past 8 months. He laid out photographs on the table. Professional surveillance shots, Aisha and Jared entering hotels, leaving together, kissing in parking lots. Mrs. Morrison quit her job 8 months ago, Harold said, but never informed my client. She pretended to go to work while actually spending her days with Mr. Matthews, all while planning to extract maximum value from a divorce she portrayed as escaping abuse. Parker leaned forward. Mrs. Morrison, did you make the statements recorded on this audio? Aisha looked at Green. He whispered to her, and she nodded miserably. Yes, Your Honor. Did you engage in an extramarital affair? Yes. Did you transfer $20,000 from a joint account to your sister without your husband's knowledge? It was for an emergency, Aisha said, her voice breaking. My sister needed... What emergency? Parker asked. Silence. Mrs. Morrison, what was the emergency that required $20,000? She was going to buy a condo. She needed a down payment. And did she buy this condo? Aisha's voice was barely a whisper. No. So where did the money go? More silence. Parker removed his glasses, set them on the bench. Mr. Green, your client came into my courtroom claiming she's a victim of emotional abuse. But what I'm hearing is a calculated plan to defraud her husband, steal from joint accounts, and manipulate the legal system to extract money from a divorce based on fabricated claims. Your Honor, my client made mistakes, Green tried. Mistakes? Parker's voice was sharp. Counselor, your client committed fraud. Multiple times. She transferred money without authorization. She lied about employment. She engaged in adultery while planning a divorce designed to maximize her financial gain. Those aren't mistakes. Those are deliberate acts. He looked at Aisha. Mrs. Morrison, I'm denying your request for temporary support. Green stood. Your Honor, I'm not finished, Parker said. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to return the $20,000 transferred to your sister within 30 days. If you fail to comply, I'll hold you in contempt and you'll serve jail time. This court does not reward fraud, do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Aisha whispered. We're adjourned. Parker banged his gavel and left the bench. I watched Green lean over to Aisha, speaking urgently. She was crying now, real tears, not the performance she'd put on walking in. Harold packed up his briefcase. That went well. Outside the courthouse, the October air was crisp and cold. I was halfway to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Blake, please, can we talk? I turned. Aisha stood there, mascara running down her face. Through our lawyers, I said, starting to walk again. She grabbed my arm. Blake, I'm sorry, I know I hurt you, but you're destroying my life. I stopped, looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. No, Aisha. You destroyed your own life. You got greedy, you got careless, and you forgot the most important rule. Never assume the people around you are stupid. I have nothing, she said, tears streaming. My family won't help me. Jared won't return my calls. I'm living in a motel. You should have thought about that before you called me a wallet with legs. I pulled my arm free and walked to my car. 3 weeks after the hearing, I was at my desk going through quarterly reports when my phone buzzed. Ernie Kim. Blake, you got a minute? I closed my laptop. What's up? You're going to want to hear this, Ernie said. I did some deeper digging into Aisha's background. Went back further than the marriage. My pulse quickened. What did you find? This isn't her first rodeo. I sat forward. What do you mean? Before you, she was engaged to a guy named William Rodriguez, California, tech executive. They dated for 3 years. Same timeline as your courtship. Got engaged, started planning the wedding, then boom. She breaks it off 6 weeks before the ceremony. Why? That's the interesting part, Ernie said. Rodriguez wouldn't give details to my contact, but here's what matters. She tried to keep the ring. $20,000 engagement ring. He had to sue to get it back. I felt something cold settle in my chest. How much did that cost him? $10,000 in legal fees. And that's just what I could confirm. Could have been more. I stood up, started pacing. So she dates him for 3 years, gets engaged, then breaks it off and tries to steal the ring. That's the pattern, Ernie confirmed. But wait, there's more. Before Rodriguez, there's a guy in New York, Andy Clarkson, investment banker. They dated for about 2 years. Let me guess, he's wealthy too? Over $200,000 a year, yeah. But Clarkson got smart faster than Rodriguez. He broke it off, and when he did, Aisha's family came after him. Came after him how? Extortion attempt, Ernie said. They claimed Clarkson had made promises to Aisha, damaged her reputation, owed them compensation for emotional distress. Clarkson filed a restraining order against 3 of them: Aisha's mother, Nisa, her Aunt Rose, and a cousin. The same women who'd been in my kitchen. The same women who'd laughed while Aisha called me a wallet with legs. Jesus Christ, I said. She's done this before, multiple times. At least twice that I can confirm, Ernie said. And honestly, I'd bet there are more. These are just the ones who left a paper trail. How many guys did she date for 6 months, a year, who walked away without documentation? I thought about our courtship. The way Aisha had seemed so genuine, so interested in building a life together. The way she'd talked about wanting stability, partnership, a real marriage. It had all been a performance, a script she'd perfected through previous attempts. What's the pattern? I asked. She targets successful men, plays the long game, minimum 2 years, usually 3. Presents herself as traditional, conservative, family-oriented. Gets them invested emotionally, financially. Then either extracts value through a broken engagement like Rodriguez, or if that fails, moves on and tries again. And I was the first one she actually married. You're the first one who made it to the altar before figuring out the game, Ernie confirmed. Rodriguez got suspicious before the wedding. Clarkson got suspicious earlier. But she had you locked in for 6 years. 6 years. I'd given her 6 years of my life while she was running the same con she'd run on at least 2 other men. Can you get me documentation? I asked. Already have it. Court filings from Rodriguez's lawsuit over the ring. The restraining order Clarkson filed in New York. I also tracked down Rodriguez's attorney, guy named Marcus Webb. He's willing to provide a statement about the case if needed. What about Clarkson? Harder sell. He's remarried now, doesn't want to dredge it up. But his restraining order is public record, and it's damning. Lists specific extortion attempts, specific threats made by Aisha's family. I walked to the window, looked out at the mountains. So she targets wealthy men, dates them long enough to seem genuine, then either breaks it off and grabs what she can, or if they catch on first, her family tries extortion. That's the pattern, Ernie said. And Blake? Both Rodriguez and Clarkson earned over $200,000. You earned $400,000. You were the biggest score she'd landed. That's why she married you. That's why she played it out for 6 years. You were worth the investment. The anger I'd been carrying since the kitchen conversation crystallized into something colder, something more focused. Send everything to Harold, I said. Every document, every court filing, every witness statement. I want him to have it all before Aisha's deposition next week. You got it. Blake, this changes everything, you know that? This isn't a wife who made mistakes in a bad marriage. This is serial fraud. This is a pattern of predatory behavior. I know, I said. And I'm going to make sure everyone else knows it too. I hung up with Ernie and immediately called Harold. He answered on the second ring. Blake, what's up? Ernie found something. Aisha's done this before, multiple times. She's got a history of targeting wealthy men, and her family's got a history of extortion when the marks get smart. Tell me everything. I walked Harold through it all. William Rodriguez, Andy Clarkson, the engagement ring lawsuit, the restraining order, the pattern spanning years and multiple states. When I finished, Harold was quiet for a moment. This is better than I hoped, he finally said. This isn't just evidence for the divorce. This could be grounds for criminal charges, wire fraud across state lines, conspiracy. This is federal territory. I don't care about federal charges, I said. I care about making sure she gets nothing in the divorce. I care about making sure Victor Green can't spin her as some innocent victim who just fell out of love. Oh, he can't, Harold said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Not with this. Not when we can prove she's run this exact playbook on at least 2 other men. The deposition next week just became a bloodbath. Good. Blake, you okay? This is a lot to process. Was I okay? I just learned that my entire marriage had been a calculated con, that I was part of a pattern, that every moment I'd thought was genuine had been performance. I'm angry, I said, but I'm not falling apart. I'm just done being her victim. Then let's make sure she never gets another victim, Harold said. Send me everything Ernie has. I'll prepare for the deposition accordingly. That evening, I sat in my home office going through the documentation Ernie had sent. Court filings from California, restraining order from New York, statements from attorneys, dates, timelines. The parallels were exact. Rodriguez described Aisha as demure and family-oriented in the early relationship. So had I. Clarkson's statement mentioned how Aisha seemed genuinely interested in building a future together. Same. Both men described a gradual shift, Aisha becoming more demanding financially, more secretive, more distant emotionally. I'd seen the same pattern. I just hadn't recognized it because I was living inside it. And her family, Nisa, Rose, Clarissa, they'd been part of it all along. The extortion attempt on Clarkson proved they'd done this before, used emotional manipulation and threats to extract money from men who tried to escape. I thought about that afternoon in my kitchen, the 4 of them laughing, planning, treating my life like a game they were playing. They'd perfected this together, over years, over multiple victims. I was just the one who'd made it furthest into their trap before the jaws snapped shut. But I was also the one who'd heard them in their own language, the one who'd documented everything, the one who was going to make sure they never did this to anyone else. The conference room felt smaller than it was. Maybe that was just the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on everything. I sat beside Harold, watching Aisha walk in with Victor Green. She looked nervous, kept smoothing her skirt, touching her hair. Green carried a briefcase that seemed lighter than it should be. That told me something right there. He didn't have ammunition. He was just here to minimize damage. Harold had his files spread across the table. Organized, methodical. He'd spent the past week preparing for this moment, and I'd never seen him look more ready. The court reporter set up her equipment. The commissioner, a woman named Barbara Walsh, took her seat at the head of the table. This wasn't a courtroom, but it carried the same weight. Everything said here would be on the record. Everything would matter. We're here for the deposition of Aisha Morrison, Walsh said. Mrs. Morrison, you understand you're under oath? Yes, Aisha said quietly. Harold didn't waste time with pleasantries. Mrs. Morrison, how many serious relationships have you had in the past 10 years? Aisha glanced at Green. He nodded slightly. 3, she said. And by serious, we mean relationships lasting more than 1 year? Yes. Can you name those individuals? Blake Morrison, William Rodriguez, and Andy Clarkson. Harold made a note. Mr. Rodriguez, he resided in California, correct? Yes. What was his profession? Green leaned forward. Objection. Relevance. I'm establishing a pattern, Harold said calmly. It's directly relevant to the question of intent in this marriage. Walsh considered. I'll allow it. Mrs. Morrison, please answer. Aisha shifted in her seat. He worked in finance. And his income? I don't know exactly. Approximately? She hesitated. Over 200,000. And Mr. Clarkson in New York, what was his profession? He was in real estate development. His income? Also, over 200,000. Harold looked at her steadily. And my client, Mr. Morrison, earns 400,000 annually. Is that correct? Yes. Do you see a pattern, Mrs. Morrison? Objection, Green said. Argumentative. Sustained, Walsh said. Rephrase. Mrs. Morrison, did you target my client because of his income? No, Aisha said, her voice stronger now. I fell in love with Blake. The money didn't matter. Harold slid a document across the table. This is a transcript of a conversation recorded in Mr. Morrison's home on the afternoon of November 14th. Do you recognize this conversation? Aisha's face went pale. Yes. And in this conversation you describe my client as a wallet with legs. Do you remember saying that? Silence. Mrs. Morrison, do you remember saying that? Yes. So when you say the money didn't matter, that's not accurate, is it? I was angry that day. You were planning your divorce strategy, Harold interrupted. You were discussing with your family how to extract maximum financial value from my client. That's what you were doing. Green raised his hand. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Withdrawn. Harold pulled out another document. Let's talk about your employment history. These are your tax returns from 2 years ago. You claimed income from a company called Anderson Marketing. Is that correct? Yes. What did you do at Anderson Marketing? I worked in their sales department. How much did you earn annually? Around $40,000. Harold nodded slowly. Then he slid another document toward her. This is a business registration search for Anderson Marketing in Colorado, California, and New York. The company doesn't exist, Mrs. Morrison. It never has. The color drained from Aisha's face completely. You fabricated employment, Harold continued, his voice steady and relentless. You created false tax documents to make yourself appear self-sufficient and financially stable. Why? I made a mistake on the forms. This wasn't a mistake, Harold said. This was deliberate fraud. You needed to appear employed to maintain the illusion that you weren't targeting my client for his money. Isn't that true? Aisha looked at Green desperately. He whispered something to her. I want to invoke my Fifth Amendment right, Aisha said. This isn't a criminal proceeding, Harold said. You can't invoke the Fifth in a civil deposition without consequences, but thank you for confirming that your answer might incriminate you. Walsh made a note. I watched Aisha's hands shake. Harold wasn't done. Let's discuss the credit cards. You opened 3 credit cards in my client's name without his knowledge or consent. Is that correct? Blake's name was on the accounts, but they were for household expenses. My client never authorized those cards. He never signed for them. You forged his signature on the applications. Harold produced copies of the applications. These signatures don't match my client's actual signature. We've had them analyzed by a handwriting expert. I thought he wouldn't mind. That's identity theft, Mrs. Morrison. Green tried to intervene. Objection. It's a statement of fact, Harold said. Let's move on. You transferred $20,000 to your sister Clarissa. What was that money for? Her condo down payment. What's the address of this condo? Aisha opened her mouth. Closed it. There is no condo, Harold said. Your sister never purchased a condo. She never even applied for a mortgage. That $20,000 was diverted for other purposes. What were those purposes, Mrs. Morrison? I don't know what Clarissa did with the money, but you transferred it knowing it wasn't for a condo purchase, didn't you? Silence. Harold let it hang there for a moment. Then he shifted direction. Let's discuss Jared. How long were you involved with him while married to my client? We were just friends. Harold produced hotel receipts, photographs, text messages. These are images from the Hilton Hotel in Denver. That's you and Jared, correct? Aisha's eyes filled with tears. Yes. How many times did you meet Jared at hotels during your marriage? I don't remember exactly. Our investigator documented 23 separate occasions over 8 months. Does that sound accurate? She was crying now, mascara running down her face. Harold's voice never wavered, never rose. Just steady, systematic destruction. Mrs. Morrison, you're not a victim in this divorce. You're a con artist. You've committed fraud on my client, fabricated employment, forged documents, transferred money under false pretenses, committed adultery while claiming to be a devoted wife. This wasn't a marriage that failed. This was a calculated scheme that was exposed. That's not true. Harold produced the final documents. This is a restraining order filed by Andy Clarkson against your mother and aunt in New York. They attempted to extort money from Mr. Clarkson when he tried to end his relationship with you. And this is a lawsuit filed by William Rodriguez to recover an engagement ring you refused to return. You've done this before, Mrs. Morrison. Multiple times. My client is just the first one you successfully married before your pattern was discovered. Aisha was sobbing openly now. Green looked like he'd been hit by a truck. I have no further questions, Harold said. 4 hours. That's how long it took to dismantle everything Aisha had built. Every lie, every manipulation, every fraudulent act, all laid out on the record with documentation backing every single claim. When we finally left the deposition room, I felt exhausted. Not defeated, just drained from watching someone's entire constructed identity collapse under the weight of evidence. Green pulled Harold aside. I watched them talk in low voices near the elevator. Harold's expression remained neutral, but I saw Green gesture several times, hands spread, almost pleading. Harold came back a minute later. He wants to talk settlement, Harold said quietly. He knows if this goes to trial, it's going to get worse for her. Much worse. What kind of settlement? He didn't specify terms, but he's scared, Blake. He's watching his client face potential criminal charges, and he wants to minimize the damage. I looked back toward the conference room. Through the glass, I could see Aisha still sitting there, face in her hands. Set up a meeting, I said. Let's hear what they're offering. 1 week after the deposition, I sat in Harold's conference room waiting for the final act. The space felt too bright, too clean for what was about to happen. Everything about it screamed corporate efficiency. Glass walls, polished table, leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Aisha arrived first. Alone. No Nisa, no Clarissa, no Rose, no family support system at all. She looked hollow. That's the only word for it. Like someone had scooped out everything inside and left just the shell. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup, wearing jeans and a plain sweater. The woman who'd spent 6 years carefully curating every appearance, every outfit, every public moment. Gone. What sat across from me was just defeated. I felt nothing looking at her. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even pity. Just a cold, distant observation that this was finally ending. Victor Green came in next, carrying his briefcase with the careful movements of a man who knew he'd already lost. He nodded at Harold, didn't make eye contact with me, and sat down next to Aisha. Harold laid out the settlement documents between them like he was dealing cards. These are the terms, Harold said, his voice neutral and professional. Mrs. Morrison walks away from the marriage with no assets, no alimony, no claims to Mr. Morrison's retirement accounts, property, or any future earnings. In exchange, Mr. Morrison agrees not to pursue criminal charges for the documented fraud. Green cleared his throat. My client agrees to those base terms. I'm not finished, Harold interrupted. Additionally, Mrs. Morrison will sign a written confession acknowledging the fraudulent conduct detailed in the deposition, the fabricated employment, the forged credit applications, the unauthorized transfers, and the affair maintained under false pretenses of marital fidelity. Aisha made a small sound, almost a whimper. Furthermore, Harold continued, Mrs. Morrison will repay the $20,000 transferred to her sister, with 8% interest compounded annually. She'll sign a promissory note with quarterly payments over 3 years. If she defaults on any payment, the signed confession becomes public record, and Mr. Morrison retains full right to pursue criminal charges for all documented fraud. That had been my counteroffer. When Green first approached Harold about settlement, he'd suggested Aisha walk away with nothing in exchange for no criminal prosecution. I'd said no. She needed consequences beyond just losing the con. She needed to actually pay back what she'd stolen, with interest, with the sword of criminal charges hanging over her head if she failed. You don't get to just walk away clean after 6 years of calculated lies. Green looked at Aisha. You understand these terms? She nodded, still not looking up. Mrs. Morrison needs to verbally confirm. Harold started. I understand, Aisha said quietly. Then she looked directly at me for the first time since entering the room. Blake, please. Can we just talk for a minute? Just you and me? No, I said flatly. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain. Sign the papers. Blake, I'll never forgive myself for what I did to you. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice level and cold. I don't care if you forgive yourself. I don't care about your guilt or your regrets or whatever story you're telling yourself to sleep at night. I just want you out of my life. Permanently. That's all this is about. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Harold slid the first document across the table. The divorce decree. Aisha picked up the pen with shaking hands and signed. Her signature looked smaller than I remembered, less confident. The same signature that used to sign anniversary cards and birthday gifts and all those little notes she'd leave around the house pretending to be a loving wife. The confession, Harold said, sliding the second document over. This one took her longer. She read through it twice, and I watched her face crumple as she saw everything laid out in legal language. Every lie, every manipulation, every fraudulent act documented in black and white, with her signature at the bottom acknowledging it all as truth. She signed it anyway. What choice did she have? The promissory note. Harold finished. $20,000 plus interest. $5,000 per quarter for 3 years. Default on a single payment and everything became public. Criminal charges back on the table. Aisha's hand was trembling so badly she could barely hold the pen, but she signed that too. 3 documents. 3 signatures. 6 years of marriage dissolved in about 4 minutes of paperwork. As Harold gathered the signed pages, Aisha stood up slowly. She looked at me one more time, and her voice cracked when she spoke. Was any of it real? Did you ever actually love me? The question caught me off guard. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because she had the audacity to ask it. Yes, I said. I loved the person I thought you were. I loved the woman who seemed kind and genuine and interested in building a real partnership. But that person never existed, did she? She was just a role you performed for 6 years. An act you'd perfected through practice runs on William Rodriguez and Andy Clarkson. Her eyes filled with tears. So no, I continued. I never loved you. I loved a fiction you created. There's a difference. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, then closed it. What was there left to say? Victor Green stood collecting his briefcase. We're done here, he said quietly. He handed the signed documents to Harold, who slipped them into a folder with practiced efficiency. Aisha walked toward the door. She paused with her hand on the handle, looked back at me one final time. I met her eyes and said nothing. She left. The door clicked shut behind her and the room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Harold extended his hand. Congratulations, Blake. You're officially divorced and you kept everything. Complete victory. I shook his hand because that's what you do. But the word victory felt wrong. I'd won. Legally, financially, completely, I'd won. Aisha would spend the next 3 years making quarterly payments on money she'd stolen, living with the constant threat of criminal prosecution if she missed even one. She'd walked away with nothing, exactly as she deserved. But 6 years of my life had been a lie. 6 years of believing I'd found someone genuine, someone who actually cared about me as a person rather than a paycheck. 6 years of building what I thought was a real partnership, only to discover it was an elaborate con run by a serial fraud artist who'd practiced this exact scheme multiple times before perfecting it on me. That's what I couldn't get back. The time, the belief, the trust I'd invested in someone who was performing a role from day one. Blake? Harold's voice pulled me back. You okay? Yeah, I said. Just tired. Go home, get some rest. This is over now. She can't touch you anymore. I nodded, collected my things, and headed for the elevator. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching people walk past. Professionals heading back to offices, students grabbing coffee, couples laughing together. Normal people living normal lives, probably not thinking about how someone they loved might be lying to them right now, this very second, about who they really are. I walked to my car and drove home to my empty house. The house that was finally, legally, completely mine. 1 month after signing those final papers, I forced myself to attend a charity event downtown. Some fundraiser for Boulder Memorial Hospital, black tie, open bar, the kind of thing I'd normally drag Aisha to and spend the whole night making small talk with people whose names I'd forget by morning. But I went alone this time, because Harold had given me advice that I didn't want to hear but knew was right. Don't let what she did make you bitter. Don't let her steal your ability to trust people. Get out there and remember that not everyone is a con artist. So there I was, standing in the ballroom of the St. Julian Hotel, nursing a bourbon and watching couples dance while trying not to think about how Aisha used to complain that I never wanted to dance. Funny thing was, I'd loved dancing. She was the one who always made excuses to leave early. Just another performance detail I'd missed. You look like you're having about as much fun as I am. I turned. The woman standing next to me was maybe mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a simple black dress that probably cost a tenth of what most women in this room were wearing. She had a glass of wine and a tired smile. That obvious? I asked. You've been standing in the exact same spot for 20 minutes. I watched you turn down 3 conversations. Either you're hiding from someone or you really don't want to be here. I laughed despite myself. Little bit of both. She extended her hand. Elise Parker. I'm a trauma surgeon at the hospital. I'm here because my boss guilt-tripped me into buying a table and now I'm regretting every decision that led to this moment. Blake Morrison, I said, shaking her hand. I'm here because my attorney told me I needed to get out of the house and remember how to be a human being. Well, that's ominous, Elise said. Want to explain? Or should I just assume you're recently divorced and trying to rejoin society? That obvious too. I work in trauma. I'm good at reading people who are in pain but trying to hide it. She paused. Sorry. That was probably too direct. My ex-husband used to say I had no filter. Your ex-husband sounds like an idiot, I said. She laughed. Really laughed. Not the polite society laugh you hear at these events. Oh, he was. But he was also right about the filter thing. We ended up talking for 2 hours. Not about my divorce, not about her ex-husband, just about everything else. She told me about her work in the emergency department, the bizarre injuries she'd seen, the strange satisfaction of putting people back together. I told her about my job in corporate logistics, the travel I used to do, the time I spent in Jordan that changed how I saw the world. Jordan? She asked. That's not the usual vacation destination. I worked there for 2 years, logistics coordinator for a supply chain company. Learned Arabic, learned to love Mansaf, learned that Americans have a very narrow view of the Middle East. Do you still speak it? Arabic? Fluently, I said. Actually comes in handy sometimes. For logistics? For catching fraudulent spouses, I said, and immediately regretted it because it sounded bitter. But Elise just raised her eyebrows intrigued. Okay, now there's definitely a story there. A depressing one. Well, she said, pulling out a business card from her purse. When you're ready to tell it, I'm a good listener. Occupational hazard. She handed me the card. Call me sometime, if you want. I looked at the card. Simple. Professional. Dr. Elise Parker, trauma surgery, Boulder Memorial Hospital, a phone number. I'd like that, I said. And I meant it. Because talking to Elise felt different. She wasn't performing. She wasn't calculating what I could do for her. She was just herself. Tired from a long shift, annoyed at being guilt-tripped into attending a charity event, honest about her failed marriage and her lack of filter. Real. She felt real. I called her 3 days later. Over the next 3 months, Elise and I fell into something that felt like the beginning of an actual relationship. Not the performance I'd had with Aisha, something genuine. We went hiking in Chautauqua Park, had dinner at hole-in-the-wall restaurants she loved because the food was good and she didn't care about ambiance, spent Sunday mornings reading the paper and arguing about politics. She never asked about my income, never showed interest in my house or my car or any of the material things Aisha had cataloged from day one. When I offered to take her somewhere expensive, she'd suggest a food truck instead. I like you, she'd said one night over Thai takeout in her apartment. Because you're smart and you're funny and you actually listen when I talk about work. Not because you have money, I make good money, I don't need yours. It was the most refreshing thing anyone had ever said to me. I told her about Aisha eventually. The whole story. The Arabic conversation, the fraud, the legal battle. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she just nodded. She sounds like a sociopath, Elise said. Clinically, I mean. That level of calculated deception over 6 years? That's not normal relationship dishonesty, that's predatory behavior. That's what my attorney said. Your attorney sounds smart. She squeezed my hand. I'm glad you got out. And I'm glad you didn't let it make you too cynical to take a chance on someone new. 3 months in, I was happier than I'd been in years. And then Harold called. Blake, we have a problem. I was at my desk at work when Harold's voice came through my phone and something in his tone made my stomach drop. What kind of problem? Aisha filed a motion to set aside the settlement. I felt my jaw clench. On what grounds? She's claiming duress. Says she was emotionally devastated, that she didn't understand what she was signing, that Victor pressured her into accepting terms she wouldn't have agreed to if she'd been thinking clearly. That's complete bullshit, I said. She had a lawyer. She read every page. She asked questions. Victor walked her through every single clause. I know, Harold said, and we have documentation proving all of that. But it's still going to cost you time and money to fight it. Then we fight it, I said immediately. I'm not giving her a single inch, not $1. Not one victory. I figured you'd say that. I've already started drafting our response. The hearing's in 2 weeks. I thanked Harold and hung up, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. 3 months of peace. 3 months of building something real with Elise. 3 months of believing Aisha was finally out of my life. And now this. That evening, I told Elise over dinner at her place. She filed a motion to set aside the settlement, I said, claiming I coerced her into signing. Elise set down her fork. She's trying to manipulate the system, just like she manipulated you. I know. Harold says we'll win, but it's going to drag everything back up again. You'll win because you documented everything, Elise said firmly. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Blake. You took control when she tried to destroy you. You'll do it again. She was right. I knew she was right, but I was so tired of fighting. 3 days before the hearing, I came home from work to find Aisha sitting on my front porch. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What the hell was she doing here? I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment trying to decide how to handle this. She wasn't supposed to be here. We weren't supposed to have contact except through our attorneys. But she was sitting on my porch waiting. I got out of the car and walked toward her. You need to leave. Blake, please. She stood up, hands clasped in front of her. Just listen, 5 minutes. Every instinct told me to walk past her, call the police, and let them handle it. But some part of me, maybe the part that had loved who I thought she was, wanted to hear what she had to say. 5 minutes, I said. But I'm not sitting down. I stayed on the walkway, keeping distance between us. She looked terrible. Thinner than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes, cheap clothes that didn't fit quite right. The woman who'd always been so carefully put together looked like she'd been through hell. Good, part of me thought. Then I felt guilty for thinking it. I messed up, she said. I know that. But the settlement was unfair. I gave you 6 years of my life. You gave me 6 years of lies, I said flatly. There's a difference. I was your wife. You were a con artist, I interrupted. You said it yourself. In Arabic, in my kitchen. You never loved me. You used me. Those aren't my words, Aisha, they're yours. She flinched. I was angry when I said those things. I didn't mean, stop, I said. Don't lie to me anymore. You meant every word. You planned it for months. You documented everything for your divorce attorney. You had an exit strategy ready. The only thing you didn't plan for was me understanding Arabic. She wrapped her arms around herself. I'm broke, Blake. I'm working at a call center making $12 an hour. I'm living with 3 roommates in a basement apartment. I have nothing. You should have thought about that before you plotted to rob me. I was wrong. Her voice cracked. I was stupid and greedy and wrong. But does that mean I deserve to be destitute? I looked at her for a long moment. Really looked at her. Tried to find any trace of the woman I'd thought I married. But all I saw was someone who'd made calculated choices and was now facing the consequences. Yes, I said simply. It does. You made choices, Aisha. Deliberate choices. You chose to lie. You chose to commit fraud. You chose to betray someone who loved you, and now you're living with the consequences of those choices. That's how life works. I'll drop the motion, she said quickly. The one to set aside the settlement. I'll drop it right now. Good, you should. You're going to lose. I'll drop it if you give me $50,000. Her voice was desperate now. Just enough to get on my feet, to get a decent apartment, maybe take some classes, start over. I stared at her. Then I laughed. Actually laughed. You're trying to extort me? Again? It's not extortion. Get off my property, I said, my voice going cold. Right now. Or I'm calling the police and showing them the restraining order I filed this morning. Her eyes went wide. You filed a restraining order? The moment Harold told me you were trying to overturn the settlement. You're not allowed within 500 feet of me or my home. You're in violation right now. She took a step back. You filed it this morning? I know how you operate, Aisha. I knew you'd try something like this, so I went to the courthouse at 8 a.m. and filed for a protective order. The judge signed it by 10. You're breaking the law right now by being here. Blake, please. You had your 5 minutes, I said. Now get off my property before I call the police and have you arrested for violating a court order. She backed toward the sidewalk, her face twisted with anger and desperation. You're a monster. No, I said calmly. I'm just done being your victim. There's a difference. She stood there on the sidewalk, shaking with rage, and for a moment I thought she might try something. But then she turned and walked away, fast, her cheap shoes clicking on the pavement. I watched until she turned the corner. Then I pulled out my phone and called Harold. She was just here, I said when he answered. At my house. Tried to shake me down for $50,000. She violated the restraining order. Harold sounded almost gleeful. Blake, that's perfect. Perfect? She just handed us ammunition. We can argue that her motion to set aside the settlement is part of a continued pattern of manipulation and extortion. This actually helps us. I sat down on my porch steps, suddenly exhausted. When does this end, Harold? 2 more days, he said. The hearing's in 2 days. And after this, it's done, I promise. 2 days later, I was back in Judge Edmund Parker's courtroom. Aisha sat beside Victor Green, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Harold sat beside me, calm and confident, a folder of documents in front of him. Judge Parker looked at the motion, then at Aisha, then at me. Mrs. Morrison, he said, you're claiming you signed the settlement under duress? Yes, Your Honor. Aisha's voice was small. I was emotionally fragile. I didn't understand what I was signing. Victor Green stood. Your Honor, my client was traumatized by the dissolution of her marriage. She wasn't in the right mental state to make major legal decisions. Really? Harold stood smoothly. Your Honor, Mrs. Morrison is a college graduate with a degree in business administration. She was represented by competent counsel, Mr. Green himself. She had every opportunity to read the documents, ask questions, and negotiate terms. She was coerced, Green insisted. Was she? Harold opened his folder. Because 3 days ago, Mrs. Morrison went to my client's home, in direct violation of a restraining order filed that same morning, and offered to drop this motion if my client paid her $50,000. That's not the behavior of someone who was coerced, Your Honor. That's the behavior of someone running a shakedown. Judge Parker's eyes narrowed. Is this true, Mrs. Morrison? Did you go to Mr. Morrison's home? Aisha looked at Victor, who whispered something to her. She nodded miserably. Yes, Your Honor, but I just wanted to talk. Did you ask him for money? Parker interrupted. Silence. Mrs. Morrison, answer the question. I asked if he would help me get back on my feet. She whispered. How much did you ask for? $50,000. Parker leaned back. So you violated a restraining order and attempted to extort money from your ex-husband. And now you want this court to believe you were too fragile and confused to understand a legal settlement? Your Honor, Green started. Sit down, Mr. Green, Parker said sharply. I've heard enough. The settlement stands. Furthermore, I'm holding Mrs. Morrison in contempt for violating the restraining order. 30 days in county jail, suspended pending good behavior. If you come near Mr. Morrison again, Mrs. Morrison, you'll serve every single day. Aisha burst into tears. Parker continued, his voice hard. And Mrs. Morrison? I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen a lot of people try to game the system. You're not as clever as you think you are. You married a good man, betrayed him, and now you're facing the consequences. I suggest you learn from this and move on with your life. He banged his gavel. We're adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Harold was quietly triumphant. That's as complete a victory as you'll ever get. I just felt tired. Bone deep tired. Is it finally over? It's over, Harold confirmed. She has no more appeals, no more motions, no more legal options. It's done, Blake. You're free. 6 months after Judge Parker banged that gavel for the last time, Elise and I moved in together. Not because I needed someone to fill the empty space Aisha left. Not because I was trying to prove something or replace what I'd lost. Because I wanted to build something real with someone who actually saw me as a person. We picked a house together in North Boulder. Nothing extravagant, just a 3-bedroom Craftsman with a view of the Flatirons. Elise insisted on paying half of everything, even though my income dwarfed hers. I'm not interested in your money, Blake, she'd said when I tried to argue. I'm interested in building a partnership where we're equals. That right there? That was the difference. One night, about a month after we'd settled in, we were sitting on the back deck watching the sunset turn the mountains purple and gold. Elise had her feet tucked under her, a glass of wine in her hand. Do you ever think about her? She asked quietly. I knew exactly who she meant. Sometimes, I admitted. But not the way you'd think. I don't miss her. I just think about all the red flags I ignored. Like what? I took a sip of my beer, choosing my words carefully. She never wanted to learn about my work. Never asked questions about what I did all day, what projects I was managing, what challenges I was facing. And she never asked about my time in Jordan. Not really. I'd mention something about Amman or the people I worked with, and she'd just nod and change the subject. Elise was quiet, listening. She was always performing, I continued, playing a role. I just didn't see it because I didn't want to see it. I wanted to believe that what we had was real. You see it now, Elise said softly. That's what matters. She was right. And sitting there with her, someone who asked about my day because she genuinely cared, who wanted to hear about my memories from Jordan because she was interested in understanding who I was. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. Thank you, I said. For what? For being real, I told her. For being exactly who you are without performance or manipulation. She reached over and squeezed my hand. That's all I know how to be. 6 months later, 1 full year after the divorce finalized, I got a call from Ernie Kim. Blake, thought you'd want to know. Aisha's been arrested. I was at my desk at work, reviewing quarterly projections. I set down my pen. For what? Credit card fraud. She ran the same game on another guy, Marcus Chen, accountant in Fort Collins. But he caught on faster than you did. Press criminal charges. I waited for the rush of satisfaction, the vindication, the sense of justice. Nothing came. I just felt empty, neutral. How long is she facing? Prosecutors asking for 3 years. With her record, the stuff from William Rodriguez and Andy Clarkson plus what she tried with you, she'll probably get at least 18 months. Okay, I said. Thanks for letting me know. You all right? Yeah. And I meant it. I'm fine, Ernie, really. That night I told Elise over dinner. How do you feel? She asked, watching my face carefully. Like a chapter is finally closed, I said. She chose this life, Elise. Every step of the way, she chose deception over honesty. She chose manipulation over authenticity. And now she's paying for it. Do you feel vindicated? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I feel free, I said finally. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. 2 years later, I married Elise in a small ceremony in Estes Park. Just close friends and family. Nothing extravagant, no performances. Just real people celebrating something genuine. My best man Joe Harris, who'd stood beside me at my first wedding and watched the whole disaster unfold, gave a toast that made everyone laugh and a few people cry. To Blake, Joe said, raising his glass. A man who learned the hard way that the best revenge is living well. And to Elise, the woman who proved that not everyone is out to use you. May you both keep proving that trust and honesty still mean something. I looked at Elise across the table. She was smiling at me, tears in her eyes, and I knew, absolutely knew, that this was what real love looked like. Not performance, not calculation, just two people choosing each other every single day. I never heard from Aisha again. Last I heard through Ernie, about a year after the wedding, she'd served 16 months and was living with her mother Nisa in New Jersey, working retail. Her family had disowned her after the criminal charges stuck. Jared had married someone else 6 months after my divorce finalized. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the 6 years I spent with Aisha. I tell them no, and I mean it. Those years taught me to trust my instincts, to value honesty above everything else, to never ever assume that people are what they pretend to be. But more than that, they taught me that speaking Arabic, really speaking it, fluently and well, can save your life in the most unexpected ways. I never told Elise this, but sometimes late at night, I still think about that moment in the kitchen. The moment I heard Aisha call me a wallet with legs. The moment everything became clear, and I smile, because I won. Not by destroying her, she destroyed herself. I won by refusing to be a victim, by protecting what was mine, and by walking away with my dignity intact. That's the best revenge there is. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.